Chelsea are a very weird prospect this season. And I guess I feel it more than most people simply because I've always been a big supporter of Graham Potter.
Right.
And so the
outside his house,
exactly.
supporting him loud and proud.
I've also been quite harsh on Thomas Tuchel.
Outside his house.
Yeah. I wouldn't like to comment on either of those two.
No.
I found out today that Graham Potter played in the Premier League. I didn't even know that.
Did he?
Yeah.
Who did he play for?
8 times for Southampton.
8 times?
Yeah.
8 more times than me.
Than many people.
And many other people. Most people.
Most people, yeah.
Yeah. The vast majority.
Do you know what position he was?
Let me guess. Was he on the pitch?
Yes.
Okay. Did he play with the ball at his feet?
Yes.
Okay. Was he a midfielder?
No.
Forward? Winger?
No.
Fullback? Defender?
He's a left back.
Goalkeeper?
This
He
is
was a left
not
back.
fun. Let's move on.
To be fair, in the middle, midfield, most left backs play in the midfield nowadays, so I'm pretty sure I got that one right.
That's right. In the mid-90s, Southampton used inverted fullbacks.
He was ahead of his time.
Yeah. But yeah, it's becoming very clear to me that there's something amiss at Chelsea.
Right.
That's not the most profound realization.
Mm.
But I saw a tweet this weekend from a guy called Aldo Sainati, who is in the Barcelona academy setup.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying what's really interesting about the way that Potter's tenure at Chelsea has sort of unravelled is that you can see very clearly what Graham Potter is trying to do when you watch a Graham Potter team. They do a lot of asymmetric things in terms of structure. They do a lot of flexible things, move things around. And we saw that at the beginning of his time at Chelsea, and we're seeing it much less now.
Oh.
And the big question is, like, why is that? I think there's a few different solutions to why that might be the case. I guess one of them may simply be that he's trying these things out and he doesn't think that they're working, and he doesn't think the players are getting the ideas, which would be fair because since he's come in, they've played pretty much midweek games every week. So he's not had a huge amount of time on the training field. And so there's been a few quotes from him recently saying the World Cup is going to be an important break for them because they'll be able to work on stuff. But the other thing is something that I think is worth realizing, that obviously this sort of thing was happening with Thomas Tuchel as well. So you look at that side, and I was very critical of Thomas Tuchel's time at Chelsea, largely because I didn't think that they were doing huge amounts of tactically interesting things. But then we get another and we know that Thomas Tuchel is a tactically interesting manager. We've got the receipts. We've seen him do that in the past. But we're now seeing another tactically interesting manager coming in, trying to put these tactically interesting ideas on the field, and it's now become very much sort of solid football. So the game that they played against Newcastle at the weekend, there was not really much sort of interesting structural things going on the field. It just looked like a solid side. So the other thing might simply be that the players are simply refusing to play in this way.
To be tacticked.
Yeah, because and I think that happens at elite sides, right? You get this sort of idea that if you have the best players and quality players in your squad, they will simply say, I don't know why if they can't understand straight away or very quickly why things are being done, they can refuse to do that as well.
I've never heard of that happening anywhere ever before. I can't think of another example of that happening.
I mean, literally PSG exists, and like the big question with PSG is...
I was doing a joke.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. You got me.
I can think of it very regularly.
John looked so hurt when you did that.
So I just thought...
He hurts me
so hurt.
I thought that bit was I waited until you'd finished your bit before I... Do you know what I thought when you were talking then? I thought that's a bit the Adam Park of Tifo administrative position might cut out as a Tifo highlight on the Tifo Highlights YouTube channel. And so I thought, best not interrupt, even though everything in my head says, say this now. Say this, interrupt him. Stop him. He's having too much of a good time. Say something horrible. And so I waited until you were finished before I made a joke, because I thought that was a nice little bit.
You're treating me like a content creator.
Mill.
Just a mill,
Yeah,
like
a flour
a piece
mill.
of meat.
Yeah, I am. Beautiful bread content.
Well, that makes me feel better, Joe. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to say anything about Chelsea, or should we move on to Spurs? I feel like we've been talking for a long time about these teams.
Well, on Chelsea, I think, so I mean, John, talking about earlier today before we started filming the podcast, was that in a system that Graham Potter relies heavily on wing-backs, he doesn't really have any wing-backs, which is not ideal.
Reece James injured, of course.
And Ben Chilwell.
Yeah, and Ben Chilwell as well.
Yeah.
Right.
So he played Azpilicueta and Lewis Hall, who I hadn't really heard of.
Lewis, is he one of the youth team players?
He's a younger player, yeah.
Right.
And then if you look across, I think if you look across that team, like, so you look at the centre backs they've got Thiago Silva, very good centre back, pretty old. Kalidou Koulibaly, same situation. And then you've got Trevor Chalobah on the other side, who's young and sort of coming through. So you've sort of got a bit of a mismatch there. In the forward areas, like Mason Mount, great player, really tactically flexible, can do loads of stuff. But then you have things like Aubameyang, again, another older player who you're not entirely sure whether he's going to hit the sorts of heights that he has been. You've got Kai Havertz, who they've struggled to fit into any system, whether that's playing as a 10, playing wider, playing as a 9.
Yeah.
You've got Raheem Sterling, who's increasingly looking like a terrible signing for them as well. And then N'Golo Kante is injured. You've got Jorginho and Kovacic, who I think between the two of them they're okay, but they're not really difference makers. So just across the squad, it kind of looks a bit flabby, and it's hard to see. I think Graham Potter is a process coach, right? So he's not going to fix things overnight. So I think we just have to accept that if they want to stick with him, they're going to have to give him a decent amount of time for those changes to come through. It took time for Brighton to get to the level that they got to. But it's not very Chelsea-ish, is it? That's the thing.
And when I think about Graham Potter at the moment, I think about a manager who presumably most evenings is fending off the internal desire to question the decision. And that's not to say at all that he made the wrong choice. I don't think necessarily that he did. But if you put yourself as a human being in the position of someone who takes a bit of a gamble, big step up, to the next team. At Brighton, he was doing so well. It couldn't have lasted forever, but he could have lasted for much longer, and he could have probably had his choice of next teams. And he took Chelsea when they came along, right? So when you're given a number of options,
I think you've got to take that choice, though.
I'm not saying you should have. Just about the point. I'm not saying that he shouldn't have done. I'm just imagining him now, with retrospect, fending off the desire to question whether he should have done.
The other problem with that is that when you go into a team like Chelsea, you don't really get opportunities to. You have to get it right first, so you can't then be allowed to play with things and learn what you're doing. You're supposed to be already at that elite level. And I think we talked about this last week, that Potter seems like a very normal person, and he's dealing with like super, super rich elite level footballers.
I just see him as a Liverpool coach. I just just never imagined him as a Chelsea coach. I thought that Klopp's time would come to a natural end, and that Graham Potter would be the obvious choice to take over, and that would maybe happen next summer or the year after.
I hadn't thought of Liverpool. I think so. You think you associate different clubs with different things that they do, and Chelsea's very much very expensive and crazily expensive players that they bring in, and they get rid of people all the time. And Potter doesn't really suit that. It's a total change now. Whole new board, whole new club, whole new world.
I'm not saying it would have gone well at Liverpool. It just like from a kind of personality match, it just makes sense to me.
Yeah, no one to tell them where to go.
I think Chelsea worked in a lot of respects because of the similarities in what Thomas Tuchel was trying to do and what Potter's trying to do. But I think what's really interesting is through the whole of Thomas Tuchel's time, we were always saying, he sort of sorted them out defensively, and we're just going to wait for him to sort out these attacking problems. And it's the same situation now. I think we've seen Graham Potter come in, try a few ideas, and then very quickly get back to, like we saw against Arsenal. They sat deep and tried to hit them on the break.
Yeah.
They were very passive against Newcastle, and it looks like the same sort of things happening. You sort of got to a point where it's like, well, we've got to make sure that we're solid in games, and then we can try and fix the attacking problems at some point. And I think once that happens with two very good coaches, the issues then are structural rather than with the coaches. It's to do with the squad. It's to do with the attitude of the players and the outlook of what they should be doing. So I think it's going to take a long time.
Perhaps a bit of time off for the World Cup might be good for Chelsea in a way that it wasn't.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. There are journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.